Hello and welcome to the Cricket Show. Joining Nasser and myself today, we have Beth Mooney, player of the tournament in the World Cup last year, which obviously Australia won. And after that, we're going to be talking with Charlotte Edwards and Isabel Westbury about some of the problems, some of the challenges for women in broadcasting, media and sport. Beth, how are you out in Australia?
Good, thank you. How are you guys? I think I'm doing a little bit better than you guys in lockdown over there, so I won't complain too much.
Just let's go to that day. It's pretty much a year ago to the day. Just how good a day was that?
I don't think it could be scripted better. As a cricketer, you dream of days like that and performing like that for your country. So to be able to go out there after the tumultuous World Cup that we had and perform like that on the biggest stage as a group and to be able to almost play the perfect game of cricket, which basically doesn't exist, was pretty unreal.
Lottie, you were out there working in a different aspect. You weren't obviously playing. But when you look back and you see a packed out MCG and you think about where you started in the women's game, how proud are you of everything?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, to be at Lord's in 2017, but to be at the MCG, in 2020 and walking into the ground and seeing that many people walking in, it was kind of, you needed to pinch yourself, and until you were sat in your seat, and I had one of the best seats in the house to watch it all, and to see it full like it was, it must have been an immense to play in front of that many people. It was an incredible day for everyone, I think, who was involved in women's cricket.
What about you, Nasser? You were commentating on the game. It's some atmosphere, I'd imagine.
It was incredible. It was an incredible stage, incredible scene. And Beth was right. The biggest thing I took out that day was how they nailed it on the day. That must have been the highest of pressure that any Australian female cricketer had ever put themselves through in their life. They were billed up as the favourites in the tournament, rightly so. It wasn't plain sailing for them all the way through, but they got to the biggest stage, and very rarely do you put on the perfect show. And Australia absolutely nailed India on that day. I mean, am I right in saying it wasn't perfect sailing all the way through? You lost your first game. There were ups and downs in the tournament, Beth?
Yeah, definitely. Nassi, I think you've hit that spot on. I think, you go into tournaments like that with all these plans and ideas of how it's going to turn out, and pretty much all of those went out the window even before we played a game. Obviously, Tay got injured, who was pretty much our key weapon going into that tournament with her raw pace and talent. And then, losing to India on a wicket that turned, and we got found out. We didn't execute our skills, and we got put under a lot of pressure, and teams saw that. So to show up in the final, and for us, the biggest pressure actually was trying to get there. So it was probably more of a relief than anything to be able to get there and play to the best of our ability and sort of have a bit of a breather once we walked out there on the final at the MCG.
And your form, what did you do well in that tournament? Do you quite like going under the radar of those star names of Lanning and Perry and Healy and just quietly perform the way you did?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably a bit explains my demeanour a little bit. I like to just do my job and get on with it and worry about the next thing. And fortunately for me, I'm in a team full of absolute elite players who will be remembered for a really long time, so I can hide a little bit in among them. But the other side of that is I've managed to crack into a team that's going to go down as one of the best in history. So for me, it was just about making sure I could do my job to the best of my ability, and T20 cricket, it comes off or it doesn't, and accepting when it doesn't probably makes the good days a bit easier as well.
Let's have a look at your 78 in the final then. And so you're going out at the MCG, playing for your country in a World Cup final. What did you think before you went out? Were you nervous? I'm sure you must have been.
It's a good question. I think there's definitely always a little bit of nerves, probably a few minutes before I walk out to bat, and Lot might be a little bit different. She obviously opened and was a world-class player in her own right, so it's a little bit different for everyone. But I find once I walk out there, I can forget about everything else and just look at the job at hand. And I actually had said that morning to a few different people, I I reckon it's going to be Midge's day. I just have this feeling that she's going to absolutely tee off and I won't have to do a whole lot. So I think going in with that mindset that she was going to make my job easier probably helped me relax a little bit more too.
What did you speak to each other about in the middle? When you know that you're having that day where you go, hang up, everything's just going to plan here, what do you speak about in between overs?
Usually just the opposition and how far off the mark they are. And for Midge and I, we just absolutely soaked up the moment. It was a day that we dreamt about 5 years ago when they came knocking and said they wanted to play the final at the MCG and fill it. And, a few of us are thinking, well, you can't even fill North Sydney, which fits 5,000. You want to fill the MCG. So for us, it was about enjoying it and embracing the moment and just being grateful that, a lot of work had been done over a number of years to get it to that point, and we were the beneficiaries of that. And it was our job to perform and make sure people wanted to keep coming back.
I was reading an article about you the other day, and you said one of the things you've worked on is the mental side of the game. Try and give yourself greater self-belief. How important has that been for you?
Massively. I think you're your own worst critic, and if you're coming into a game with a lot of self-doubt and demons on your shoulders, you've probably already lost the battle against the bowler at the other end and you haven't even faced the ball. So for me, it was more about accepting that cricket's not a game where you're going to come off all the time, and you're probably going to get out every game as well. And actually, one of my really good mates and I came up with a theory about the fact that cricket's a sport where you might only do well 6% of the time and have a great day where you perform well and the team wins, or one of your really good mates performs well and the team wins, and the rest of the time it's a bit ordinary. But that 6% is what we keep coming back for, and what we crave as athletes is that challenge of getting better and improving all the time and evolving. So I've been fortunate enough to have the resources and the coaches and the facilities around me to be able to have the capacity to improve all the time.
Lottie, you're the best best batter I've seen play for England. Did you have self-doubt, though, along the way?
I'd be lying to say I didn't. I think you go through, phases in your career where you do. And, and I think as I got older as well, I probably had more self-doubt. The game was getting more exposure. There was more scrutiny and so on. And you set incredibly high standards for yourself as well. So I definitely had self-doubt. I guess it's just having that self-belief then to know, and it goes back to probably us playing the boys cricket I played when I was growing up, that tough skin and so on, that you just keep coming back and you just want to keep performing. So but yeah, I think any batter or any cricketer would lie if they said they haven't had that doubt. Is
it coincidence that the two nations that have put the most into their women's game have won the 50 over World Cup, England at Lord's, 2020 World Cup at the MCG, the change in contracts, the change in prize money for both England women, Australian women, things like paternity leave. They've really looked after their women. Is that a coincidence? And how do we get this global?
Personally, I think Australia have really led the way in that area, and I think ECB are really following, and I think that's been a significant step for us. Australia have had this domestic professional setup now for over 5 years, where we're starting that now, and I think we're going to start really seeing the benefits of that. I think there's no coincidence Australia have been so dominant in recent years because of that setup, because they've got this pool of players they can constantly pull on, and as probably Beth will say, there's huge competition for places in Australian cricket. I think we haven't got to that point yet, but I think in the next 3 or 4 years we're going to have that, and I'm really excited by that, because I've been to Australia, I've seen how that all works, and the WBBL is the best domestic competition in the world, but hopefully with the 100 this year we're going to have something to really rival that.
Yeah, I think Lottie's spot on there. I think, and Nasa, you are as well, England and Cricket Australia have definitely led the way in making sure that our international teams are the best teams in the world. And there's no secret that if you invest in your business and your organisation and your teams, that you get the results that you're looking for. And I think we're really blessed in Australian cricket to be supported like we are. As Lottie said, we've got a fully fledged domestic competition that's almost fully professional now. Hopefully in the next couple of years it'll be full time for those domestic players. But I still think there's a long way to go for Australia, for England, for all the other countries as well. It's about making sure we're marketing the players and the teams and making sure we're giving them equal opportunity to improve their game and hone their skills, no matter if they're from Australia or South Africa or India. So that will make the international competitions a lot stronger, and the standard means we'll get more people talking about it and more people watching it, which that's the really exciting part about where the game's heading for women's cricket.
Beth, we're going to talk in the next part a bit later on about some of the challenges for women in sport and cricketers in particular. In this country, are there still challenges in Australia for the girls?
I think so. I think there's a huge gap now between the domestic players and the international players. I think whilst we have lots of girls who are playing in situations where they're put under pressure and against some of the best players in the world, they're still not getting paid a full-time wage, so they still have to juggle uni and whatever else to make ends meet. But I think we're heading in the right direction. I think the thing I'd like to see is equality among sort of coaches and organisations in terms of how involved they are in their female programs, facilities and things like that. I think those improvements can always be made and gains in those areas can always be made.
Charlotte, what did you think? Last summer, Claire Connor said she thinks maybe for the future of the women's game that the men's game had to take priority because of COVID, because of the finances of the men's game. A, did you agree with that? And B, has that really held women's cricket back? Because, like, for example, India, different country, obviously, but they haven't played a game since that World T20 final. So Australia have kicked on a bit domestically. But do you agree that it has had to take a bit of a backward stage, or could more have been done?
I think it had to take a backseat, but I will say the ECB have done everything they possibly can to get women's cricket played in this country. And I think the fact that they got the Rachel Hayhoe Flint and the domestic structure up and running at the back end was an incredible effort under, what was at the time, really hard time for the game. So I think, but what I don't agree with is the fact that a lot of countries have just made no attempt to play any international women's cricket in the last 12 months. I mean, India, to think they've not even played a game, I think is unbelievable. So I have got a huge concern about the international women's game moving forward. I think you've got two teams in England and Australia heavily committing to women's cricket. And then you've got India, who are a powerhouse and should be really competing with those teams. But then I do fear for the other teams. There has simply been, not enough investment in their programs. And, I really hope we see at the next World Cup it's going to be competitive. But I fear for it being a sort of a three-team race, really. And that, that worries me for the game moving forward.
Beth, go back to a lighter note. That winning moment and the celebrations that followed, what were they like?
Yeah, I think everything you talk about as a kid, aren't they? You're winning catch, taking the ball out of team in a World Cup final, and all your friends and family are in the crowd. There's an unbelievable amount of people there literally just to watch us play a game of cricket. And, we had obviously been through a lot throughout that tournament. So for all of us to be there and get all our families and friends into the change room and share the moment. And obviously I'm not a huge dancer, so I didn't enjoy the Katy Perry scene as much as everyone else. But a few of them were on the podium for best dancers of the night, but I wasn't one of those girls.
You're not a great dancer. One of us in this 4 boxes here is also not a great dancer. I want you two to give us your opinion on Rob Key's dancing. What do you think of Rob Key in Lycra?
Oh, geez.
Jeez.
I
better than I thought.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I'm coming for you now, Vlad, because you sit there, you moan about me stitching you up, and then you put me up there in Lycra when I had to do a thing for Sky. I was working, and you had your little mate there filming me quietly. So just let you know that you've lowered the bar, and I'm going to come for you about that. But anyway, on that note, Beth, thank you so much for taking the time out to come and join us. I know it's probably quite late there in the evening, but anyway, thank you very much.